Every year at MadeIN, we put together an amazing Thanksgiving menu. I start working on it in the summertime, and it's one of my favorite things to work on. Last year, we got a turkey from Tom Colicchio, we got a lovely braised cabbage from Mashama Bailey, and we got a stuffing from Nancy Silverton. I knew I had a big challenge ahead to try to top last year's menu. To get started, we think about which chefs we want to reach out to. So who's doing cool stuff that year? Who haven't we worked with in the past on the Thanksgiving menu? Who do we want to highlight? So heading into Thanksgiving and holiday season, we're really focusing on our core products. So I start to think about which cookware we want to feature, which dishes might pair well with that, and which chefs to bring it all together. We want to reach out across the country via email, via text to put out the feelers and see what we can come back with. So at this point, I start to get recipes in from the chefs, and they come in all different forms. They can be a spreadsheet, they can be chicken scratch on a napkin, they come in all different ways. My biggest challenge is formatting the recipes from chef recipes and restaurant recipes to something that a home cook can read. So, taking a recipe for 100 pies and shrinking it down to 1. One dish that I have this year on the menu that I'm really excited about is Amanda Rockman's pecan pie. This is a really special pie because it has a chocolate shortbread crust. It has rye whiskey in the filling along with chunks of chocolate that almost act like chocolate chips. And it has a beautiful smoked vanilla whipped cream topping. I open up the email from Amanda and it's a spreadsheet. It doesn't have a ton of information, but it's obviously laid out for restaurant production. I started working on the crust first. I didn't have an industrial size stand mixer, so I thought I'd just go ahead and try to make it in my smaller 5-quart stand mixer. It definitely did not work. When I rolled it out, it was crumbling and falling apart, and I really wasn't sure if I was doing it right. When it started to bake, and it looked kind of speckled with these pools of chocolate inside, and I felt like that was probably not what it was supposed to look like. I was worried about it. It was a mess, I'll admit it. I might have used a few expletives that day. So at that point, I was emailing a bunch of questions to Amanda. She was writing me back and decided to invite her into the kitchen to show me in real life how to make this pie. Amanda graciously agreed to come in and teach me how to make her pie in our studio. So I've made your pie a couple times. Okay. The first one is not good enough to show you at all. Oh, no. And it's already gone. It actually got eaten, okay, so people enjoyed it. But
pie got eaten, so yes. I'm happy about that.
And I've made another one that I have here to show you. Maybe we can try it and talk about it.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so what do you think about the crust?
I think the crust looks great. I think that the thickness is lovely. I would maybe go a smidge thinner, just because it was kind of hard to get through. Other chocolate flavor, the rye definitely comes out. I think that I would serve this a little bit more room temperature, and then you can pipe your whipped cream right before it goes out to the table for Thanksgiving.
I'm seeing a lot of liquid in here.
I think maybe it's just a little underbaked.
Okay.
It would be my guess.
Okay.
Not mad about it.
Let's get started with the crust.
Let's do it.
Okay. Then she helped me really understand what type of dough it was, because it's creamed together kind of like a cookie dough. It's not your typical pie dough where you're starting with cold butter and trying to create flaky layers. So what kind of dough would you say this is? This
is like a traditional-ish tart dough. I wanted to create something that was a little bit more chocolatey in flavor and had just a little bit more of a bite than a flaky crust. We're gonna first take our butter, which you wanna use room temperature butter. This allows you to really cream your butter.
So usually when I make pie dough, I want really cold butter.
Because you want to keep those little chunks of butter so that when it evaporates, it creates that puff. Here, since we're making more of a tart dough, you're actually incorporating the butter so it's a little bit smoother. At this point, I'm going to give you my little tambourine. You're going to sift out your powdered sugar and your salts. I like to let it mix on low until I know that all the dries have been incorporated in the butter. So we're going to let this mix probably for a good 5 minutes. And we're gonna scrape down the bowl, making sure that again, everything gets brought to the bottom, everything's taken off the paddle. And again, we're mixing it again. We're trying to make sure this is homogeneous, everything's mixed together. It's gonna get really fluffy, it's gonna get larger in volume, and it's gonna be really light in color. Here you noticed, there's not a ton of volume, but it's nice and creamy. It still has a yellowish tinge from the butter, but again, it's super creamy like frosting. So she showed me how to sift the ingredients. She explained why. She taught me her boat
method of creating a parchment, almost funnel to send the dry ingredients into the stand mixer. We talked about what the different flours were bringing to the dough between almond flour, cake flour, and all-purpose flour.
So the reason why I did 2 flours is that there's different protein contents. It's ranging from higher protein to lower protein that gives it strength. So because we're trying to create a tender pastry, we're going to use items that have lower protein. So I split it in between 2 so that it still has a nice crunch. But again, this has a lower protein, so it's still tender.
So I explained to Amanda that when I had made the pie dough, it was too much for my stand mixer. She brought her industrial-sized stand mixer so that we could make it together. Eventually, we ended up reducing that recipe down to make just 1 crust because her recipe actually made 3. So you only need 1 crust for the recipe, and you can actually use a smaller stand mixer. But when we started out on this journey, we were using the big boy. So I didn't quite, it was really hard to get it all mixed together because, as you know, I was using a smaller stand mixer. So I ended up just putting it into a bowl and trying to kind of work it together.
That must have been kind of upsetting.
It was hard, but I got through it.
At this point, I'm going to kind of smush the tart dough. The texture that you're looking for is kind of like a thick sugar cookie dough. And we're going to chill this so that it firms up.
Why do you have to let a dough like this rest?
Sure. 1, you want to make sure that the gluten rests, and also 2, imagine trying to shape that. Now that would be something to cry about. So we want to let it firm up, and we want to let the gluten rest.
It was also great to see her roll out the dough. I was trying to make a rectangle into a circle, but she just rolled the dough into a rectangle and then cut it into a circle. Something
that I commonly see people doing is that they feel like they can only roll like this. But what they don't understand is that your body can move, right? And at the same time, your dough can move. And you have to work quickly. This isn't something that you can take a little break and, go have a snack, make a ham sandwich. And I'm not making a circle. I'm making a nice little square.
What do you do if it gets too soft?
Too soft. You can always put it on a sheet tray and put it in the fridge. Don't be a hero. Don't be a hero. Put the dough back in the fridge. I beg you. The dough begs you. It's like, help me, I'm getting soft now. At this point, take my beautiful MadeIN knife.
So how much of a circumference are you giving it there?
I would say this is probably 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch.
And then once we had the pie dough in the pie dish, she showed me how to kind of pinch it around the rim and then go back in and crimp the crust.
At this point, I'm gonna just bring it down, making sure it's hitting the bottom. And at this point, I'm gonna use the pads of my thumbs, and I'm just gonna kind of gently push it in to the bottom crevasse of the plate. See that? You get that nice crisp edge.
So do you want it to be kind of flush with the pie dish?
I do at this point because now I'm gonna go back, so I wanna trim a little bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of use this claw effect, kind of like a kitten. And I'm just gonna push the tart dough up. So that's what I kind of meant by rounding the edge. And again, this does kind of feel like Play-Doh. Do feel empowered to move it around. You do need to move quickly. What I really love about this dish, and I did not realize it until I made a pie in here, that 1, the depth of it is really nice, but the lip really supports the edge of your pie. When you're creating a design, it really supports it, and that makes me so happy. Nothing is worse when you take a pie out and you're like, it's beautiful, and then one little thing cracks off and you're like, I have to redo this. Now, I like to allow things to chill, especially when I create something like a design that has edges. I want to chill it completely down before I put it in the oven.
How long?
I would say at least 2 hours.
Okay.
So go work on something else, take a walk, watch a show, read a book.
And then once we had the pie dough in the pie dish, you blind bake the crust for about 15 minutes with baking rice, and then you remove that coffee filter with the rice and continue baking it until it's dry to the touch. Then we moved on to the next portion of the recipe, which is the filling. I had to order a lot of special ingredients for this pie, including glucose syrup. I've made pie with cane syrup or corn syrup, but never with glucose syrup. So I was kind of curious why that was being used. in this filling and what effect that was gonna have?
So we had chatted about why I use glucose versus corn syrup. I like it because it's less sweet than corn syrup. So anytime that I can lower the decibel of sweetness, I'm gonna try to find a way. Glucose is really sticky, so you're gonna see this. Something that you can do, you can also microwave it lightly and it'll come out a little bit easier. But for the sake of seeing the struggle, we're gonna do it this way. So glucose also helps with texture. It helps items not to crystallize. We got light brown sugar. I'm gonna add some butter.
I make a pecan pie for Thanksgiving every year, but I've never made a filling in quite this way. She actually melted the sugar, the glucose syrup, and the butter together to make a really homogeneous filling, and then used an immersion blender to add the eggs so that everything was really well incorporated. A little rye whiskey got stirred in there, and then that gets chilled overnight before baking off the pie. The next step of the filling that was different was that mixture of toasted pecans and chocolate chips.
So we have our chopped up pecans, and I have 72% dark chocolate. If you want to go milk chocolate, you can go milk chocolate, butterscotch, whatever you want. I like dark chocolate. I like to add my pecans, and then I add my chocolate.
And the big little chips like that?
Yes, I prefer that. Now, again, if you want it to melt out more and be less studded with chocolate, like a chocolate chip cookie, you can cut them up. I prefer not to because I like when it bakes out, you get these like little medallions of like shiny chocolate on the top. I really like that aesthetic. So again, personal preference, that is mine. Then you're gonna take your cooled pecan filling and you're gonna flood in your pie. At this point, I'm gonna put it in a 325-degree oven. I'm gonna start with 15 minutes. I'm gonna check it out, probably rotate. And then what we're looking for is a nice golden brown, and you don't want it to jiggle at all. You want it to kind of like when you move it, it's like all stays in one place. Adding a little bit more flavor. I like to brush a little bit more of the rye whiskey on top, just to make sure you really get that flavor in, and like one of the first bites, you're really gonna feel it.
I was worried about it the first time I made it because the chocolate wasn't really melting and kind of incorporating into the rest of the filling, but that's actually intentional. So when you look at the pie, it almost looks like a chocolate chip cookie. You have pools of chocolate in there, mixed in with the pecans, mixed in with the filling, and that's how she wants it to be. When we made the whipped topping, I really got a kick out of smoking the vanilla bean. I know that Amanda makes a bajillion of these pecan pies every year, so I'm sure she's smoking more than just one vanilla bean, but it was pretty fun to just smoke a lone vanilla bean in our grill frying pan outside our office.
I've never turned on a smoker to smoke something this small before, but
Totally worth it, right?
sure, yeah. Had some trials and tribulations, had
Okay.
some rainy weather, but got it smoked for you.
Lovely. So what I like about this idea of smoking the vanilla bean is that it adds another layer of flavor. We're kind of tamping down the sweetness. We're adding in more interesting flavors to the whole pie, if you will. And I think that smoked vanilla is a really wonderful smell and flavor.
We took that vanilla bean and scraped it into a cream, and once the cream is infused with the smoked vanilla bean, you added your sugar, salt, and kappa carrageenan, which is something that helps stabilize the whipped cream once it's piped onto your pie.
So we're gonna garnish this with two things. Our smoked vanilla chantilly, which we put into a bag with the tip, and I have atomized chocolate. Now, if you can't find atomized chocolate, you can use cocoa powder. I prefer atomized chocolate because it is literally atomized chocolate, which has a more chocolate flavor opposed to cocoa powder, which is a little bit more bitter. Right now, we are going to pipe little rosettes onto the pie. The way that I like to do it is I like to think of it as slices, so I'm gonna pipe like one and then across the way, and then one and across the way. So I'm trying to make as even as possible. And then I just gently dust around the edge, and then a little bit on the chantilly. And that is your chocolate rye pecan pie.
You tried my pie.
And now we're gonna try mine.
Yes.
It's only fair, right?
Would you please do me the honors?
Would love to.
Look at that slice of pie.
Yeah, she's pretty, for sure.
Not as juicy as my pie.
Nope, it is not, but we're gonna see how it tastes.
Yeah.
So let's go from there.
I love the way all the flavors are playing together. Like you said, there's not one that's like super high. It's kind of like equal sweetness, pecan, chocolate.
Then you get the rye. So it really allows you to have multi-flavors in one dish.
What really struck me by having Amanda come to the MadeIN studio was just her level of detail in every single step. And not only had she written that into the recipe, but she explained why. Why are you sifting your ingredients for the crust? She really explained every step of the way what she was doing and also why. There's some things that a recipe can't teach you, and you can really learn a lot by watching someone do something.
Well, thank you. I think it's really, what I try to express is sharing information and educating so that people feel empowered to make their own. You know, I would never want pastries to be scary. So if this helps you in any way to try it on your own, then I've done my job.
My biggest takeaway, I think, is I just didn't bake it long enough.
Yep, I agree. Like, I think overall, like, it was very similar. So I think you did a really good job. Give yourself a hand, give yourself some grace.
Thanks.
And every time you make it, you have more information moving forward to make it even better.
Yeah, I think next time, I'm gonna nail it.
You're gonna absolutely nail it.
So after Amanda left and showed me all of her tips and tricks, I gathered my ingredients and decided to give it one last try. One thing that really helped is the original pie dough recipe was actually enough to make 3 pies, but she reduced it down to 1. So I was able to do it in a stand mixer, and it was just a lot less volume to work with and a lot easier for me. So I worked on the pie dough, got that into my quarter sheet tray and chilled it overnight. The next day I rolled out the pie dough just like she showed me, trimmed it around the pie dish, worked it into the pie dish, didn't worry too much about how it looked, but remembered that it was kind of like this malleable substance that I could make look how I wanted to. Just took my time with crimping it and got that in the oven to blind bake. After that, I worked on the filling, left the chocolate chunks as they were, toasted off the pecans, and worked on the mixture of glucose, butter, and light brown sugar to make the filling. Finally, put the whole thing together, let the pie cool. It was looking beautiful. I piped the cream on top, dusted it with a little cocoa powder, and served it to my friends. And that's how you make Amanda Rockman's chocolate rye pecan pie. For more Thanksgiving recipes from our chef customers, please check out MadeInCookware.com. I'm Rhoda from the MadeIN studio. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.